Israeli occupation airstrikes on Rafah and Khan Yunis in southern Gaza, causing multiple casualties, including the killing of the Hamas Political Bureau member Salah al-Bardawil. The Israeli occupation military says it intercepted a missile fired from Yemen. And Israeli occupation artillery and airstrikes hit southern Lebanon after intercepting cross-border rockets. And it's 10 a.m. Cairo local time, and you're watching Qnews, and I'm Salma Al-Fi'i. We begin today's bulletin with the latest developments in Gaza. Israeli occupation airstrikes have targeted the southern Gaza cities of Rafah and Khan Yunis, resulting in multiple casualties. According to local reports, several people were killed and many others sustained injuries as the attacks hit residential areas and key infrastructure. Salah al-Bardawil, a member of Hamas's political bureau, was also killed in an Israeli airstrike on Khan Yunis in the southern Gaza Strip. Palestinian health officials stated that emergency responders were working to evacuate the wounded, but the ongoing bombardment has complicated rescue efforts. And Israeli occupation forces have launched a series of raids across the occupied West Bank, forcing dozens of Palestinians to flee their homes, seizing buildings and demolishing property. In eastern Tulkarem, soldiers displayed dozens of residents and turned several buildings into military barracks. The raid extended to nearby refugee camps, with a heavy military presence observed. And in Surbayer, southeast of occupied Jerusalem, Israeli forces demolished a Palestinian man's two-story home, displacing its residents reportedly over permit issues. Troops also stormed Silwad, Deir Nidam, and eastern Nablus, escalating tensions in the region. And chief foreign policy advisor to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said Israel is applying military pressure on Hamas in an effort to bring back the remaining detainees in Gaza. Ofer Folk added that Israel embraced U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff's bridge plan, which aims to extend the ceasefire into April, and claimed without evidence that Hamas has refused the proposal.
Whatever it takes to achieve all our war objectives, and we actually embraced Mr. Witkoff's proposal.
And Israel's far-right finance minister Smotrich has announced plans to officially recognize 13 additional settlements in the occupied West Bank, despite their status as illegal under international law. Smotrich, a key figure in Israel's settlement expansion, described the move as part of a broader effort to normalize and regulate Israeli settlements. The far-right minister has long advocated for Israel's annexation of the occupied territory. Last year, he pledged to bring 1 million new settlers to the West Bank, further fueling tensions in the region. UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy has stressed the urgent need for an immediate return to the ceasefire in Gaza after Israel's resumption of the genocidal war on March the 18th. In a tweet on his X account, Lamy said the resumption of Israeli airstrikes in Gaza marks a dramatic step backwards. Alongside France and Germany, the UK urgently calls for a return to the ceasefire. Thousands of protesters have marched in support for Gaza and Palestinian statehood. Similar marches took place in Lyon and Toulouse. A 2024 report by France's Human Rights Commission said racism and intolerance are rising in France, fueled by the war in Gaza and far-right ideas in public debate. Reports of anti-Semitic and anti-Muslim acts increased by 284% and 29% respectively from 2022 to 2023, while other types of racist acts increased by 21%. And thousands of Israelis have gathered in Tel Aviv to call for a ceasefire deal and ensure the release of detainees from Gaza. Netanyahu's decision to resume the Gaza war on March the 18th, while 59 detainees, around 24 of whom are believed to be alive, are still held inside the enclave, has added fresh momentum to anti-government rallies. Protesters have accused Netanyahu's administration of continuing the conflict for political reasons. And thousands of Israelis have demonstrated against the decision by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government to dismiss the head of the Shin Bet Domestic Intelligence Service and resume fighting in Gaza. Netanyahu said this week he had lost confidence in Ronan Bar, who has led Shin Bet since 2021, and intended to fire him effective April the 10th, prompting 3 days of protests. Israel's Supreme Court issued an injunction temporarily freezing the dismissal. The Israeli occupation military has said it intercepted a missile fired from Yemen. Sirens sounded in several areas in Israel after the projectile was fired. The U.S. has previously targeted Yemen with waves of strikes, and the Houthis have declared they will escalate their attacks, including on Israel, in response. U.S. President Donald Trump has ordered fresh strikes on Yemen, with at least 19 people reportedly killed in an operation that could last for days. Trump announced these strikes against the Houthis in response to its decision to resume attacks on cargo ships near the Red Sea. The U.S. has killed at least 32 people in Yemen since it launched attacks on Yemen a week ago. Yemen's Houthis have said they have launched a series of military operations, claiming responsibility for a ballistic missile strike on Israel's Ben Gurion airport and drone attacks targeting U.S. naval assets in the region. In a televised statement, the group's military spokesman, Yahya Sarriah, said the operation, the third of its kind in 48 hours, successfully achieved its objective. According to Syria, these attacks used multiple drones as part of a broader response to what he referred to as American aggression in Yemen. The Israeli occupation military has said it attacked 2 military bases in central Syria, claiming they hosted military strategic capabilities. Israel has been carrying out near daily airstrikes in Syria for months, resulting in civilian casualties and the destruction of military sites, equipment, and ammunition belonging to the Syrian army. And now we move on to the latest developments in Lebanon.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين. وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بيخوف.
Israeli artillery and airstrikes hit southern Lebanon after Israel said it had intercepted rockets fired from across the border. The Israeli occupation military said in a statement it was bombing Hezbollah targets in South Lebanon. Lebanon state news agency reported a spate of Israeli airstrikes and artillery barrages in the country's war-battered south, including border towns of hilltops around 8 kilometers inside Lebanese territory. A Lebanese citizen has been killed and several others were injured following Israeli airstrikes targeting southern Lebanon. The Lebanese Emergency Health Operations Center reported that an Israeli airstrike on the city of Tyre resulted in the killing of one person and the injury of 7 others. The center also confirmed that another airstrike on a house in the town of Kalila led to the injury of 4 people. Israeli occupation military has stated it intercepted 3 rockets that crossed into Israel from Lebanon. Israel's defense minister said that the Lebanese government bears responsibility for any rocket fired from its territory, adding that he instructed the military to respond accordingly to it. Hezbollah denied responsibility for the strikes, saying it had no link to the rocket launches and that it remained committed to the ceasefire. The Secretary General of the Arab League, Ahmed Abul Ghait, has expressed the League's full support and solidarity with Lebanon in the face of the ongoing Israeli attacks. Abul Ghait wrote on X platform in a phone call with Lebanon's foreign minister. He expressed the Arab League's full support and solidarity with Lebanon in confronting the ongoing Israeli attacks against it. He added he will intensify international contacts to halt these attacks and ensure the full implementation of both sides' commitments under the previously agreed ceasefire. Egyptian Minister of Foreign Affairs and Migration Bedr Abdelati and his Lebanese counterpart Youssef Raji have discussed the latest developments in southern Lebanon. The Egyptian Foreign Minister reaffirmed Egypt's support for the Lebanese state, its national institutions, and its stability in the face of security challenges. He also stressed the importance of implementing and adhering to the ceasefire agreement in southern Lebanon, the immediate and complete withdrawal of Israeli forces from the area, enabling the Lebanese army to enforce the UN Resolution 1701, and ensuring its full and simultaneous implementation by all parties without selectivity. And we now move to the latest developments in the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. A Russian drone attack on Kyiv has killed 2 people, sparked fires in apartment buildings, and forced the evacuation of tens of people. Ukraine's State Emergency Service said a woman died after falling debris from a destroyed drone sparked a fire in a high-rise residential building, the capital's Dnipropetrovsk district. The service added another person died in the overnight attack on Kyiv's Holosiliviskia district. Russia has said its forces targeted Ukrainian military airfields, ammunition depots, and troop positions, while Ukraine reported striking a Russian military command post. Russia's defense ministry said that its air defenses shot down a Ukrainian MiG-29 over 100 drones and intercepted multiple bombs and rockets, while Russian forces targeted Ukrainian positions in Kursk. Meanwhile, Ukraine's military reported repelling Russian attacks near Kyiv, Pokrovsk and Kursk and said its Air Force struck a command post near Russia's Belgorod region. Russia has claimed Ukrainian forces deliberately blew up the Sudzha gas station while retreating, while Ukraine accused Russia of shelling it. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov dismissed Ukraine's statement as absurd, accusing it of attacking the Russian energy infrastructure despite a ceasefire agreement. He claimed Russia remains committed to not targeting Ukrainian energy sites. Ukraine's military called Russia's accusations groundless, saying the station was repeatedly shelled by Russian forces. The station, once a key gas export route to Europe, shut down on January the 1st after a transit deal expired. And now we move to Rehem Morsi in our newsroom. Good morning, Rehem.
Good morning to you, Selma. Thank you so much. And now we're going to have a look at the latest when it comes to economic, financial, and business news. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and his Japanese counterpart Takeshi Iwaya have co-chaired the 6th China-Japan high-level economic dialogue in Tokyo. Wang said that the normalization of diplomatic relations between China and Japan, bilateral trade has increased more than 300 times and has remained at a high level of $300 billion for 15 consecutive years. With the cumulative bilateral investment reaching nearly $140 billion. He added that the two sides will work to avoid the politicization of economic security in order to maintain stable and smooth industrial and supply chains. Australia's government has said it will extend its $1.8 billion Australian dollar energy bill relief scheme in the upcoming federal budget ahead of a tightly contested election due by May. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's Labour government has already provided $3.5 billion Australian dollars in relief to combat inflation and rising living costs. Under the extension, households and 1 million small businesses will receive an additional $150 in automatic electricity bill rebates. The U.S. auto industry is bracing for the fallout from new trade policies, including 25% tariffs on the sector, as announced by President Donald Trump's administration. Following a 30-day delay, the policies are scheduled to take effect in April, and according to a recent study by Fitch Ratings, Michigan's economy would likely be the hardest hit of all U.S. states from the tariff fallout, with 19% of its imports coming from Canada, Mexico, and China.
They're going to be dialing back.
Johnson & Johnson has planned to increase U.S. investment by 25%, reaching over $55 billion in the next 4 years in response to potential drug import duties under the Trump administration. The investment includes the construction of 4 new plants, with one already underway in North Carolina's Wilson. While the increase includes regular R&D and IT spending, some of these plans were previously anticipated. Other U.S. companies like Eli, Lilly, and Apple are also boosting domestic production. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission's Crypto Task Force has held its first public meeting focusing on how securities laws apply to digital assets. Experts such as John Reed Stark, Miles Jennings, and Troy Paradis participated in the Republican SEC Commissioner Hester Pierce leading the task force. The meeting marked a fresh approach to crypto regulation, addressing industry concerns about classification as securities versus commodities. The task force aims to develop clear rules and guidance. New York Federal Reserve President John Williams has stated that the current U.S. monetary policy is appropriate, given economic uncertainties. He emphasized that while inflation remains above 2% target, the labor market is solid and there's no immediate need for rate change. Williams acknowledged eventual interest rate cuts but highlighted significant risks to both economic growth and inflation. He suggested waiting for more data before making further policy adjustments. And now back to you, Sedma, in our studio.
Thank you, Riham. And that brings us to the end of our news bulletin. And here's what we have been covering. Israeli occupation airstrikes on Rafah and Khan Yunis in southern Gaza, causing multiple casualties, including the killing of Hamas Political Bureau member Salah al-Bardawil. The Israeli occupation military says it intercepted a missile fired from Yemen. And Israeli occupation artillery and airstrikes hit southern Lebanon after intercepting cross-border rockets. And this concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.